So, I don't know if you heard or not, but they have claimed that they have birthed three white wolves that are, that they call dire wolves. So they're claiming that the dire wolf is back from extinction. And so there was supposedly, and I don't know too much about this because I just seen a short video on it, you know. Supposedly through science, like they figured, something out. They took like some sort of like, I don't know what it was. I can't remember what they said was all done in the video that I watched, but they, took certain cells from a direwolf bone or something, and well, pretty much they breeded, it with a. Now, obviously, dire wolves are extinct. I don't remember the process, but technically, it would be like, um, obviously, with having a lot more of science behind going on, technically, they breeded with a gray wolf. I mean, that's just the term that I'm using. Obviously, they didn't really breed because dire wolves are extinct, but somehow, some way, they um, did this science. They figured it out with science, and they claim that um, dire wolves came back from extinction. So, but before we get started, you should know that I'm not a scientist. I'm not a dog breeder. You know, I not any kind of scientist at all. I'm not in that field. You should know that I do a lot of research. I research things. Do gain, I love gaining my knowledge by, reading certain articles and, watching videos and things like that and doing a lot of research. And one of the research that I have done, although I can't say that I've done research on breeding, but I've done research on how you cross pollinate plants, and how you can um, cross pollinate plants to create a hybrid, or create a different plant through the cross pollination. And so you would be like, well, what's plants have to do with any of this? Plants and animals are very alike in the fact that like a dog cannot mate with a cat and come up with something different. Like, yes, you can take a dog and breed it with another canine, and you can get a different breed of dog. Well, with plants, you can kind of do the same thing. You can cross pollinate, and but however, you cannot um, you cannot take a fruit and a vegetable and create a new type of half breed, right? Like a half vegetable, half fruit. But then with the fruit family, so with the fruit family, you have your citrus, you have your berry group, and things like that. So you have your different family, like different kinds of that are you know so you cannot take a strawberry and um you cannot take a strawberry and an orange, a strawberry plant and an orange plant, and get something between a strawberry and an orange. um you have to take the strawberry plant has to be from its own kind to create a hybrid. And again, there's that word hybrid. Because so for example, you take a blackberry plus a wineberry, and you're going to come up with, or you should be able to come up with a hybrid. So how do I know? I didn't. Again, I'm not a I'm not a scientist, right? So I don't technically have eyes on boots. I haven't, seen it happen. But I did research it. I've researched, like on Google, asking Google, can you mix this plant with this plant? Can you mix this plant with this plant? And that's how I found out that if you mix a blackberry with a wineberry, you're going to end up with a hybrid. And that's when you put it into Google, that's what it told me, is that there would be a hybrid. That's just what it said. It would be a hybrid. Now, is there a hybrid? Is there a hybrid of the blackberry, wineberry? That's like, I don't really know. I couldn't figure that. Like, when I was doing research, I couldn't find out if there was already a hybrid. But so technically, this hybrid would sort of technically be a new plant, but it wouldn't necessarily be a new type of berry. It would just be a hybrid. And again, the word hybrid, I want you to understand a hybrid. So again, for another example, um, if you took a raspberry and, you know, a wineberry, cross pollinated, you're going to probably come up with a hybrid. And again, technically, it would be new, but technically, it would not be new because it would just be a hybrid, right? And then obviously, probably from the hybrid from the raspberry and wineberry, plus taking the hybrid from the blackberry and wineberry, the blackberry wineberry hybrid, taking that cross pollinating with the raspberry wineberry hybrid, you're probably going to get another new hybrid. Um, because it's just a different, obviously you're probably going to get a new hybrid. So, um, for another example, if you take a citron plus a lemon, you're going to create a new hybrid. Like most likely, um, from my research, from what I did, like asking Google these questions, you're going to come out with a new hybrid. So again, that hybrid is there. So going back to the direwolves, are they a direwolf? Technically not. Technically they're not a direwolf. They would be a hybrid. They would be a mixed breed, right? Because you took gray wolf and um cells or whatever the scientists did, they mixed, they pretty much breeded and I don't know exactly how they did that, but what it would be is a hybrid. And I know plants aren't necessarily the same thing as animals, but it's pretty much the same. It would work the same way. Again, you take a trayberry plus a boysenberry, and you're going to come out with a hybrid. That's, pretty simple. Um, and yet they claim that it's a direwolf. But no, it's just a hybrid. And then they also, and I'm going to come back to the hybrid, but they also are using this to say that, well, this proves evolution. That doesn't prove evolution. No, because We already know that if you breed a dog with another dog, you're going to get a hybrid of the two dogs, right? But we already know, like, you cannot breed a cat with a dog and get something new. So, in order for them to prove evolution, they would have to breed a dog with a cat and come up with something new. That's not going to happen. See, Charles Darwin, his expedition to these islands, right? And he discovered how the finches were, like they, and he calls it, I guess, like natural selection or whatever. Um, Animals, and they have said over the years, well, that's how you prove that evolution, um, that the world was created by evolution. That's not proof for evolution because we know that animals can adapt to their environment. So you can take any animal, put it in a different environment, and most likely it will be able to adapt. There's a certain, and I don't know what exactly type of rabbit it is, but there's a certain rabbit that it's like during the winter, its fur will turn white as snow. Why? To protect it from its enemies, protect it from predators. Not really its enemies, but protect it from its predators. So you you see how, and then an interesting thing is squirrels. In Wisconsin, you have the typical brown squirrel, and then you have some black squirrels. I don't know what the actual name for them are, but you have black squirrels. And that's a very good example um, of how animals can, kind of adapt to certain environments. And so it's interesting. There was a moment, a aha moment, when I was looking outside I was at my parents' house, and they have this tree right outside um, just a window, and I was washing the dishes once, and I looked outside this window, and there was this brown squirrel sitting on the tree, and he was eating a nut. And I saw how the color matched like, so if you were like a hawk or a predator, um and you were, flying in the sky, you probably would not be able to see the squirrel, right? Because the brown squirrel kind of matches the tree. And so you like how it was perched up on that tree. If you were um again a predator, flying up above, you would think that the squirrel perched up there like that was just part of the tree. And then another day, so time passed after this, and another, day. This is, after we had some rain, and you can tell that the ground is like the soil is black, and there was an area, so with like the neighbor's yard, like an area where there's not much grass, and you could see the dark soil. Well, I saw that day a black squirrel sitting, and he was all curled up, perched on that black soil, and he was eating a nut. And I was like, that is the perfect, like, again, if you were a predator flying, looking for food, you're probably not going to see that like, if that black squirrel was to um, be really still, you would not have, from the sky, you would not have seen that black squirrel, because the black fur was the same color as the soil. So again, um animals, there's a reason why, you have different variety of animals. Like, for example, you have the brown squirrel and the black squirrel, and they can blend in. Like, the black squirrel blends in really well to the black soil, and the brown squirrel blends into the tree. So, um, this, so that's just what animals do. They can, you know, I don't know how to say this because I'm not a scientist, but they, like, they can create, um, fit into the environment. So there's a certain type of bird, and I forget what island it is, but there's a certain island where they have these birds that can swim underneath the water. They can't fly because their wings are too small to fly, but it makes them perfect to, swim underwater and catch fish. So obviously, sometime, you know, these birds would have, over time, came to this one island, and then over time adopted to fit that environment. And again, that's just what animals do, is they typically will make a way to fit their environment. Does that prove evolution? No, that actually proves how awesome and amazing our Lord and Savior is. The creator of this world knew that if a um, animal were to go from one habitat to the other habitat, they would need a way to survive a completely different habitat. So that's what the Lord our God did, was he made a way for animals, just like the brown squirrel, black squirrel, just like the rabbit, and just like this duck or bird, or what, I don't know if it qualifies as I don't know if it's a duck. I don't know. But this type of a bird, um, that kind of, once they got into these environments, that's what they, and then there's also frogs that can do that. There's lizards. Uh, every species, you can see where they can kind of change the, either change how they look or whatever, um, to survive the environment that they're in. Um, and so, again, it doesn't prove evolution at all. Although through the years they have said it proves evolution, it doesn't prove evolution. That just proves that our God is wise, and he knew ahead of time that these animals would need certain genes to, when they got placed in different habitats, they would need certain genes to kind of like help them survive. Um, so going back to the, what they did to the, like recreate the direwolf, and how they're saying that is proof for evolution. Well, I just explained it to you. No, that's not really proof for evolution. But then also, um, so if they were to find serious proof for evolution, they would have to, again, be able to breed a dog with a bear and create a new species. That's not going to happen. That is definitely not going to happen. Is that going to happen? No. Because a brown squirrel and a black squirrel, I mean, they're two different squirrels, but they're both squirrels, right? This rabbit, so-called, and I forget what type of rabbit it is, and I don't remember where you can spot it, but it being able to, change its fur, like, so that it blends into the snow during the winter, Well, it's still a rabbit. This bird that, in time must have, flew to this island that, you know, changed, like over time, their wings got smaller and they, kind of changed. They're still a bird. They didn't go from dinosaur to bird. They're still birds. They're, and all of these finches that Darwin, you know, they're still finches. They're not they're not a different type of bird. They're clearly still finches. Um, they just it they um again it's God putting some kind of gene or something inside of them to, change to the environment that they're in. But they're still finches. Again, this one bird on this island, like, is still a bird. It's not going to become anything else. It's still going to be a bird. Uh, when you breed a lab with a poodle, it's still like it's going to become a mixed breed. It's going to become a hybrid. But it's still going to be a dog. And we know that. We know we can breed any type of dog with a nut. Like, you can breed the German Shepherd with a black lab and it's going to be a hybrid. So that brings me back to this so-called dire wolf. Is it really a dire wolf? No, it's not a dire wolf. It's a hybrid. However, can you breed this hybrid with um can you breed this hybrid with, like, take this hybrid and these whatever the scientists did with the dire wolf, can they take the hybrid and do the same thing that they did with the so-called whatever they did with the bone of this dire wolf and gray wolf, so they, kind of breeded. That's just the term. Again, that's the term that I'm using. And they created a mixed breed. Can they take this mixed breed and do the exact same thing? Yes, they can probably do the exact same thing and get another mixed breed that would be closer in genetics, probably a little bit closer to the direwolf. And then, so from there, they can do the same, probably do the same process. And what's going to happen is the pups from that, their genes are going to be a little bit closer. And so eventually, yes, I do believe eventually you can take a hybrid and, so what I'm saying is you can take these hybrids and breed them with a gray wolf, and their pups are going to, like, their genes, they're still going to have the dire wolf gene, but instead of the genes being 50-50, most likely, because it's a mixed breed, you're taking a mixed breed and you're breeding it with a gray wolf, right? Most likely you're still going to have the pups are most likely still going to have the dire wolf gene, but it's going to have a little bit less. I mean, most likely. But the pups are still going to be so you're going to have a mixed breed from the dire wolf, gray wolf, and then if you take the mixed breed and breed it with a gray wolf, you're going to have a mixed breed, like a different mixed breed. And this slightly different mixed breed is still going to have genes from the dire wolf, but it's going to have less. And it's probably going to have more from the gray wolf. And so that's what I'm saying is I'm confident that if you take this mixed breed and whatever they did with this dire wolf bone, the science behind it, you could probably get another mixed breed that was closer to an actual dire wolf until the dire wolf was made. If you were, like, let's say you took the mixed breed, this mixed breed, and this mixed breed was bred with let's say a different breed than the gray wolf. They weren't bred with the gray wolf, put them aside, but they were bred with like a different breed. You can do that. It's just going to be a different variation of the hybrid. It's I mean, technically you could call it a new hybrid, but technically it's not really a new hybrid. It's just a different variation of that hybrid. So go back to the plants where I talked about the hybrid from the wineberry raspberry and the hybrid from the wineberry blackberry. If you were to cross-pollinate those plants, the hybrids of those plants, you're creating, I mean, yes, it's a new hybrid, but technically, it would be identified as just another variation of the two hybrids that you have. And so that's what I'm saying is if you were to take these hybrids from the dire wolf, gray wolf, these hybrids, and breed them with a different breed of wolf, would you get another hybrid? yes, you would get another hybrid, but it's just a different variation of that hybrid. Now, eventually, if these hybrids kept mixing and matching and kept breeding with different hybrids and things like that, could you eventually come to the dire wolf? Yeah, that's a possible. It's possible. I mean, I don't know the chances, and I don't know if that's really. I don't know, but like I can see where eventually, because you have hybrids mixing with this hybrid, or and then sooner or later, um, you would have to eventually get to direwolf, probably. Again, don't take my word for it, but I mean, and I don't know what the chances of that would be, but you know, that might be another way to, finally create the direwolf. But is did the direwolf come back from extinction? No, not yet. Not yet. I'm not saying, I'm not rooting out the possibility of, if they continue to breed, that, um, so if they continue to breed, I can guarantee you they're eventually probably gonna, eventually going to come, the dire wolf will come back. I mean, I kind of gave you, now there's one example I'm not really for sure on, and there's one example, again, the mixed breed of the dire wolf and gray wolf. If you were to take this mixed breed and do the same process that they did with the gray wolf, and to get the mixed breed, obviously, again, the offspring should have more genes of the dire wolf and less genes of the gray wolf. So that definitely, eventually from that, the dire wolf would be able to come into existence. The other example, I don't really know. I mean, I think it's possible, but I think if it was possible, it would be a small chance that you would be able to get direwolf from that. But yeah, that's how you get direwolf, right? So again, do I think that they have, the direwolf came back into existence? Like, no. It's a mixed breed. That's what you have to understand. It's a mixed breed. It's a hybrid. It's not actually, like, it has the dire wolf genes, but it also has the genes of the gray wolf. So, but is it still possible that the dire wolf can come back from extinction? Yes. And I'm confident that I just explained that to you. So, hopefully you have liked this video. Again, I'm not claiming to be a scientist or anything like that, but I do have the gift of knowledge, and I do my research, and I again take my word for it. Animals are kind of like plants in that you can't take a dog and a cat and breed them, and you can't take a strawberry and an apple and breed and cross pollinate that. You just can't do it. So they still have not proven evolution. So don't fall for whenever they say, oh, well, this proves evolution. No, it has not proven evolution. And of course, there are those that are not going to like what I said in the video. They're going to turn a closed eye. They're going to close their eyes to what, the evidence that I just presented, obviously, for whatever reason, right? But I mean, again, a bird is going to stay a bird. It's not going to change into anything else. A dog is going to stay a dog. It can change into a different breed, but it's still going to be a dog. And so, yeah, this crazy, thing that we all come from this one cell or whatever they claim, like that's clearly false. And every time they say that, oh, well, this proves that theory, no, it doesn't prove that theory. It doesn't. It just proves that God put a certain gene or something. He just specially, made animals special in the way that they can adopt to their environment.